We're at the end now, and you should be finished writing your mock grant application. We're going to touch on the last areas that weren't addressed: dissemination, post-award reporting, and the broader scholarly communication environment. There will be some compliance issues that you may need to include in your application. But a lot of this is thoughts for your future plans as a funded researcher. You saw during your application review that even after you're funded, there are post-award compliance requirements. The most common of these is post-award reporting. Basically, all grants require you to report out after the fact about what the results of your grant were. You know that researchers can't be sure of the results of their research. And for that reason, we have to keep our sponsors updated on how the progress goes and what the actual results are. It's good in this process to address how well you've met the bigger picture impacts and effects that you were hoping for as well. That's usually what comes closest to circling around back to the funding program's goals. So the PO will need to know that for their own reporting purposes. Reporting can include verbal presentations or written reports. Often you even have to do both. So you want to think about what you would say to them, as well as what the more in-depth progress reports should include. In a spoken presentation, you want to include images, summaries, and impacts as much as possible. It's not like teaching where you want lots of details. Give them the big picture so they get a strong feel for what happened, but you don't drown them in details. Think about how much these lectures have covered. That's overwhelming enough when you expect to be studying, but it would be way too much in a presentation. So don't base it on your teachers. Think more like professional meetings you've been to, and then scale it back even some from that. Assume you're talking to non-experts like politicians as well as your PO and agency. Written reports are where you want to put the detail. Include data, charts, and graphs. Also, go back to the model of your progress that you made in the last session and even your original application and use that to discuss your progress along the path you expected. Even if you ended up going in a different direction, you can show how that compares to the original thoughts and what it led to. A great technique is to look back at the statements and citations you used to prove there was a need for your research and connect those with what you've done in your research. And that way you can say that you've filled this need and that need to show the impact that you've had on the state of knowledge. Those effects and impacts are very useful to your PO. And since you might be working with that PO again, you definitely want them to be happy. Okay, let's also talk about post-project sharing. You want to share because it's good for science, but also because it's good for you. When you share your knowledge, others see how much you've contributed and recognize you as an impactful researcher. One thing to share is your data. That may actually be required as part of your grant even. If you saw compliance discussions of a data management plan, this is where that comes in. There's a great website that will walk you through the data management plan. That website is http://dmptool.org, and it has example data management plans from all sorts of agencies, as well as a web form that will walk you through your data planning with questions and prompts for you to respond to. And then it prints out the plan for you. Pretty neat, right? It's almost doing the work for you, but you do have to do some important things. One is structuring the data so it can be used. That includes making a code book or other data definitions that allow it to be reused. Any definitions and structures that a total stranger would need to use your data will need to be included. Also, you need to decide how long you want to keep that data private to just you. You can hold on to it until a set release date so that others can't use it to beat you to the next project. But after some time, you need to release it. So decide when and also how you plan to release it to others. The storage and release can be automated at a data repository, or you can decide to do it through your institution personally. In addition to your data planning, you need to have a broader dissemination plan for your findings. This can be done through presentations at professional conferences or through publication in journals. Or, of course, you can do both. You'll have some of that dissemination plan in your application. Where are you thinking you will release the information, and why do you prefer that place to others? If you had dissemination costs in your budget, you need to describe those reasons in the budget justification so that your reviewers understand the costs associated with sharing that information. So if it's a top conference or a big conference or a niche conference, you describe that. Oh, and another part of dissemination is open publishing. In many grants, you have to put a copy of your article or articles in an open repository so that other scholars can find it. Usually that's covered for free as part of your participation with the funding agency. The most common is that if you get funded with the NIH and then published, the published articles have to have a copy on PubMed Central so that others can find them online. I bet you've found some good articles by searching there too, or Googling reposited articles. A lot of people do that, and that's how they can find your research easily. So it benefits you as well as the funding agency by making sure your research is easily discovered. It's been so successful, other agencies are going to join the NIH in that. So include those plans for that open access for your data and publications in your grant if they're mentioned in the solicitation. And you may be wondering, how do you get that article published? Well, of course, as researchers, we look for peer-reviewed journals. And those are journals where your article will be sent to a group of reviewers to look at and comment on, then recommended for or against publication. And truthfully, it's usually in between the for and against ends of things, as either a conditional accept, that's for publication but with a few changes, or else a revise and resubmit request. That's when you have to make a lot of deep changes, but if you do them, then you can resubmit and it has a good chance of acceptance. Now that you know what peer-reviewed journals are, you need to find one. You can start with journals you read in classes because you know they're good. Good enough for your professors to recommend, which is probably quite good. But other than those, there are other good journals that just haven't come to your attention yet. Let's go to a great website that lists and ranks journals. It's simagojr.com, and it's a great free site for exploring journals. Now, honestly, a lot of campus libraries have other great resources like Scopus or ISI Web of Knowledge, but not all of them. So we'll work with this because you all have access. Let's look at these journal rankings. I'll look at Earth Sciences, and then pick Geotechnical Engineering and Engineering Geology. Click Refresh and scroll down. And here we see journal titles. They rank them by their own metric and mark them by quartile. So this Q1 symbol here, you can probably barely read it there. And that shows that this is in the upper quartile of ranked journals in this subject category. So journals that are in multiple disciplines can be in different quartiles for their disciplines depending on the other ones in it. Let me click the second journal here, Geotextiles and Geomembranes, and you can see that they had some lower rankings or maybe higher competition back in the late 90s and were a little lower ranked relative to material science than they were relative to geotechnical engineering. But you see, as the time goes on, they shot up fast, and they're into the top quartile, and now they're a top journal. Once you have a journal you're interested in and know the publisher, you can search for the title. Keep an eye out that it's the right journal from the right publisher. There are journals out there with the same title. I found two called Geotextiles and Geomembranes. In most journal websites, there will be some sort of instructions for the authors. See Guide for Authors here. That usually tells you how to submit. That's usually online these days, and often, but not always, through a submission portal. And this one says email, though. Pay attention to what kinds of articles they take. You don't want to send a case study to somewhere that says only quantitative studies, for example, and they'll just send it back. And it says original for a reason. Absolutely do not send an article to two journals at the same time. That's a big mistake. If one rejects you, then you can revise and send it elsewhere. Or don't revise if they say it's just not their type of article. Whatever works. But never at the same time at two places. And there's usually a section on references. Some journals have their own house citation style, like this one. And others use a standard style like APA, CSE, MLA, Chicago, Harvard, Vancouver, etc. You may not know all of those styles, but remember to check and find out how to format. Okay, that's probably enough of a publishing overview. You have to experience it to really learn the process, like so many things. But now you have a basic idea how to start looking and getting published, right? And that's the end goal of research in so many ways. Start with the funding, end with the publishing. And then you're ready for your next project and next funding. For any of these complex writing projects, it's good to get local review before submitting. In other words, get some peer reviewers to review you at your institution to give feedback before going to the big-time results. So if you're doing your mock grant application, I suggest that you set up a mock peer review as the final stage. You haven't done an application until you've gotten that feedback and know what was right and what was wrong. This is the ultimate learning experience in the process. So, get some faculty. Ask your advisor or the Office of Sponsored Research if there is a group of faculty that can do a mock review. Then, collect copies of the review rubric that your agency uses. Check the website. It may describe but not show it. In that case, use what they say to build a rubric. Sometimes you can even ask the PO, but be nice about it. And also let them know that it's for a student project, so they don't think you're planning to apply and then wonder where you disappeared to. Give the review rubrics out and distribute your application, and then wait and get your feedback. Sometimes you can get verbal feedback to ask questions at, other times it's written, but it's always going to have lots of suggestions, and that is going to be a big help to improving that application and your future ones. So take it seriously, but not personally. Wow! If you stuck with me through the whole semester here, I'm impressed. You're a hard worker, and I know that you're going to be a great asset to the field. You PSM students are hardcore. It's been great working for you. I know your serious work is going to lead to serious rewards. And this is Nina signing off the last mini lecture video for the UNC online course on the Fundamentals of Grantsmanship. Congratulations, you've earned it.